Welcome to the Calling All Messengers podcast, where we help you clarify who you are and why you are as a Christ-centered messenger. Join us as we share key insights and processes that will encourage and empower you to reach your tribe. Now listen in with your host, certified life purpose coach and messenger midwife, Tarika Facion, and online business strategist and resident messenger, Lakeisha Gates.
We want to welcome you back to another episode of the Calling All Messengers podcast. This is Tarika Facion, one of your co-hosts, and we have on the other side,
Lakeisha Gates, resident messenger.
Oh, yes. I love that. So we've been going through the 7 questions that every messenger must answer if they are to effectively reach their tribe. And today we are on question number 3, which is your message. And we say message, we want to just be very clear. This is what you want your tribe to know, understand, and have access to, and be able to apply to their lives as a result of encountering your message. And something that Keisha said recently just really struck me. She said, everybody wants people to be better. But when we're talking about your message, we're saying now it's time to move from the generalities to the specific. And in this, we can really begin to see how God is in the details and he cares about specific needs. So it's something very different about saying, I want to help. I want to see parents do well with their kids in the school system versus saying, I really feel called to reach single mothers of color who have children who have been diagnosed with autism, navigate the school system better in the inner city because I want them to experience that their education matters and that they can move forward. So do you begin to see how when you kind of stay in the land of generalities, those specific solutions that are needed don't always get addressed? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So when we're talking about what is your message, we're asking you to really begin to drill down and see what it is that God is specifically asking you to bring to the world and for whom. So with that being said, and we'll kind of delve into a little bit more about what that question is, but I want to just give room for Keisha to share a little bit. When you hear the word message, or when you kind of first came to the messenger experience, what kind of clarity did you have at that moment before we kind of took it through all of the clarifying process? Kind of generically, what was your message when you first came to the process? And then we'll drill down into how it got more specific for you.
Right. I want to help people.
You want to help people, but to do what?
Generally speaking, before I went through the messenger experience, it was, I just wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And anytime people would come to me, and whether it was, can you relax my hair? Things that I shouldn't have been doing with a licensed cosmetologist. Can you dye my hair? Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? I just had a heart to help people. And so it was very general, but I knew that I was a servant in some kind of way, because I just had this strong desire to help. So much so that I wrote this time capsule when I was 17 to be opened 5 years or 10 years later, something like that. And it said that I wanted to be a nurse or a doctor. And I read it with Sine, because I still have it. And she was like, you don't even like that kind of stuff. Like, why would you even think that that was something you wanted to do? But again, it all went back to, I just really had this heart to serve and help people. And it wasn't until I went through the messenger experience that I got honed in on my true core message, which is what we're going to be talking about today, that I realized it's not just that generality of I want to help.
But that's good, Keisha. I want to pause there because I think sometimes people do start off with just this general sense of something. I think even just you sharing that is a gift to this conversation, because I don't want to dismiss that it may start off like this generic or hazy concept, but you knew that you wanted to help. So that was like the first indicator of, okay, now I got to start asking those clarifying questions like, well, who do I want to help? How do I want to help? Because once again, you can do all the things. You're able to do hair. You're able to help people in all these different areas, but it's beautiful that the more narrower our path gets, the more clear we are about where we're going to direct our energy. So just with Keisha saying that, I want to just go ahead and lay the foundation for why we asked this question of what do you want your tribe to know and understand? And then we're going to have Keisha just share a little bit more about how she got more specific with it. So why this question? It is important to begin clarifying your journey or the process that you will be taking your tribe through. This is a process that you have lived through, prayed through, so that you can become a true guide to those whom God has charged you to share your message with. So what you want them to understand, you will be more intentional and methodical about the processes you are taking them through, because God is serious about his people. And we're just sharing with everyone here that we should be as intentional as well. Because I don't know about you, but you ever struggle with something and someone is just like your health or whatever, and people are just like, eat better. And you're like, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. But it's something about someone who's gone through what you're going through and can itemize and give you the anatomy of the process. So now I can track with that because I have some specifics to work with. So Keisha just shared, she started off with this whole concept, like, I knew I wanted to help people. So we all have to start somewhere. So we're not begrudging the start, but it is on us to get in community, to get with God, to begin to clarify that. So Keisha, you started off with, I knew that I wanted to help. Where then did you go next in your clarifying process?
Next was I wanted to help people move their visions forward. And so that was the next part of the journey that I realized that no matter what I helped people do on the side, whatever jobs I was doing in my 9 to 5s that I worked, I was always helping people get to an intended outcome. So it was very outcome based. And as I morphed, and that's something that we'll also, I'm sure, talk about on this podcast, is the more that you step out and you do, the more clear you get. But that was the next part in the journey, was I want to help people move their visions forward. And then I started getting more specific about what type of people. I knew I wanted to work with women. I knew I wanted to work with leaders. I knew I wanted to work with people who are Christ-centered. I knew I wanted to work with folks who were action takers. So all these things eventually led me to, I want to help these leaders contribute their life's work to the world. So it more from what I was capable of doing myself to how I was going to partner with God to help these leaders contribute their life's work, not just in their local space, but their message to impact the world. And to me, that carries so much more of a mantle. It's a little bit more weightiness to it because you have to think beyond yourself.
That's good. I like the word that you said, mantle. And even in our previous question, we talked about the mandate. So now that you're wearing this mantle, Keisha, so you looked around and you saw people, you knew that they had vision, but you knew that they were potentially stuck or they weren't really moving it forward. So what is it that you wanted your tribe to know and understand and have access to? What did you now begin to clarify or create to take your tribe members through so they could move their vision forward?
So there are these 6 core pillars that, even if I don't ever say them verbatim, run through everything that I do. Number 1 is that you have to have faith. And faith, we were just talking about before we start recording today. Faith, you have a belief, right? You have a belief in something. So it's kind of twofold. I'm talking about our Christian faith because I'm a firm believer that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. He has the power to transform us all. He has the power to fill in those voids, in those spaces that no man, no amount of self-help, no amount of meditation is going to fill. He is what you're looking for. But then you also have to have a belief that it's possible. So when you hear me do an event like I Can and I Will, that's that pillar of belief. You have to have faith. And then you have to embrace new mindsets. The word says we need to renew our mind. That's my second pillar. We have to be in a position to say, I have to shift my perspective, because if I don't, then I'm going to end up just being in the same space, in the place that I am now. So there has to be a shifting of perspective, almost like a pivot from where your current view or where your current path is taking you. You have to kind of take a little detour to say, I'm going to think about this a little bit differently. And then people say this all the time. You might think it's cliche, but I don't. Trial and error. You have to be willing to fail, because the quicker you fail, the quicker you can move on to whatever the next thing is. Tarika shares about this story about good, bad, who knows. The quicker you can figure out good, bad, who knows, just keep it moving, because when we sit there in fear, it keeps us stuck. And then we never know if it's the right thing or not until we try it. So you have to push yourself out there and say, even if I fail, I'm still closer to where I'm going, and I can get there quicker because I had this failure right here and I didn't wait 3, 5, 6, 7 years to experience that and lost all that time. And then we have to build new habits, because in order for you to move your vision forward, in order for you to contribute your life's work to the world, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. And that is that process of, what are you going to do to set goals? What are you going to do to exercise discipline? Who is going to hold you accountable to those those things. That's the process of building new habits, but I'm not asking my people to build these new habits quickly. The next pillar is small changes over time. I don't care if you're spending 10 minutes a day, but that focused 10 minutes accumulates and then it builds up. Next thing you're doing 20 minutes. Next thing you're doing 40 minutes. Next thing you're doing an hour and a half, because that growth is exponential. It's not 1 minute. Today I'm doing 10, tomorrow I'm doing 20. It's not the same. It's once you build up that muscle, you start to grow in leaps and bounds. And then the sixth one is you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to be willing to be receptive to teachings. You have to be humble, but you have to have a desire to say, whatever I have to do, read, attend classes, sit at the foot of an expert or a practitioner. I prefer a practitioner, but whatever you need to do to get an understanding, be committed to be a lifelong learner. And I say that especially, like, I've been at this for a really long time, but especially in this day and age, we have to be flexible because information is changing so rapidly. Technology is changing so rapidly that you have to stay up with it. If you don't, you will get left behind. So that was my last one, is to be a lifelong learner.
Keisha, thank you for taking us through that. And the reason I wanted Keisha just to share the pillars in the process is one of the things that I can say about Keisha is that she is the personification of her message. So the things that she's sharing, everybody in her life and who she's working with can attest that that is what she lives into. And so that's another part of your message. It will be an integral part of who you are. So you're not taking people through what you haven't gone through or that you are not living yourself. So I want you guys to really understand that, because a lot of times we'll see things and it's like, oh, that's a great message to empower women or to do this or to do that. But once again, the message that God has seeded into you, it is such a part of your DNA that it needs to show up in every area. So one of the things that's also a part of Keisha's process that we all experience who have the benefit of knowing her is her GAP method, that gracefully applying pressure. So you guys are even getting this podcast right now because of Keisha's 6 pillars and her GAP method and her START method. So God has always given her language around what her offerings are and what her services are, but she's saying what undergirds it all are those 6 pillars. So now you may be asking, okay, Tarika, like, that is awesome. How do I get clear about my message? So shameless plug here, check out the messenger experience. I'm telling you, the whole point of us even creating this experience is for us to get clear as messengers in all of these different areas so that we can begin reaching our tribe. So that's why when we talk about the message, the first thing we always do is the I am work. We get clear about your personality, your spiritual gifts. We get clear about your values, your passions, your mission, your vision, because those are the things that are going to inform your message. And that's why we're saying your message will also always require some sort of work. So when you come to Keisha and she's saying, oh, I'm going to help you contribute your life work, like, there's a work that she's going to give you, because it's not just going to fall in our laps. Like she was saying, that lifelong learning, that being willing to try and fail, because God doesn't mind course correcting us. But the key is, are we on a course for him to even correct? And so right. I think sometimes we have to be mindful, like, well, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. Well, we have a God who is everywhere, who is all sufficient, all knowing. Like, how are we really going to miss him? And if we do, quote unquote, miss him, do we trust him enough that his grace and his mercy is going to be there to shape us or to bring wise counsel into our lives? I know every time that I was potentially stuck or needed assistance, God always brought and brings what's needed. So it's going to be an imperative, especially if you're trying to move in that clarity where you're just trying to say, well, I know I want to help people. I know I want to help women. I know I want to help kids, but you're trying to drill down into what that is. Don't sleep on the people who have gone before you or the resources that are out there that will help you begin to clarify these pieces. And it's not just the messenger experience, even though I believe that it can be a pivotal resource, but there are podcasts and other things. But the key is listen to where God is directing you, because you can be so overwhelmed by information that then you get that analysis paralysis where you can't move because you got somebody saying go left, somebody else saying go right. It's blue. No, it's orange. So you really have to get still with the Father and say, okay, who is my guide alongside? Where is my clarity going to really come from? So Keisha, I know that the messenger experience absolutely served a purpose in your life, but what has God been doing just since, by way of communities you're a part of, relationships you developed, that continues to allow you to clarify and drill down even further, because you are a lifelong learner. So the journey didn't end when you graduated from the messenger experience. So what has he been doing by way of community you're learning to further help you clarify your message and who you're called to reach?
So fair warning, once you start this process, it's continual. Once you open your yourself up to really tap into who you are and who you were created to be, it's a process if you allow it to be. It's a growth process if you allow it to be. So after completing the messenger experience, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a life coach because I have a message. I want to help people move their visions forward and contribute their life's work to the world. And so I did that for a while, but it was interesting. As I was doing it, people would always be coming to, I would ask them, well, what are you coming to me for? I want you to help me get my life together because I want this business that I want to start. Time into whether it was a life coach, whether it was some kind of soap, or physical building like coffee shops. And I'm just like, okay, there's kind of this thread that is running through what everybody is saying. And then God gave me a word that I was going to help people make money. And I remember calling Tarika like, how am I supposed to teach people how to make money? I'm not making $1 million, $2 million. And opportunities came before me to join different communities that stretched me, that taught me, that gave me the skills and the opportunity to use those skills in a different way. Because sometimes we negate the information and the skills and the abilities that we have, not just our gifts, not just those things that God has given us, but also those other skills that we've built just from living life. And one thing that I didn't take into consideration is that I like teaching. I like learning. And I feel like the opposite side of liking to learn is teaching. Because if somebody asks me something, I'm gonna be like, boom, this is all you have to do. Boop, 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 boop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I got to be a part of these pilot projects and these programs that helped me build up my consulting experience. And then towards the end of 2019, I was certified as a certified corporate consultant. And that tapped me into a whole new path of helping people build their businesses. But it's a continual process of seeing how all these things fit together and how God had intended for them all to fit together all along. But just like my pillars, He's allowing me to make small changes over time if I'm staying committed to those other areas. If I'm staying committed to, okay, let's test this out and try this. Okay, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to. Mm-hmm. But I could take what I've learned from that experience on to the next part of my journey. If you're going to keep on learning, then boom, I'm going to add this to you. If you're going to be committed to renewing your mind, like not getting stuck that this is the way that it always has to be. And He takes me through my own process. That's and rich. So because of that, I have had the opportunity to grow and kind of merge these two worlds together where I am a coach consultant. I am going to always have a heart for the people because that's who I am. I'm a shepherd, but I'm also a teacher and I'm going to hold you to the carpet. I'm also apostolic. And so I'm going to have all these ideas that are shooting off all the time and I'm strategic. So all of these things, when I sit down and I have a conversation with my clients, I'm able to bring that. And I have a little bit of prophetic in me too. It's not my strongest gift, but in those moments, He shows up and speaks through me because listen, I would be remiss if I didn't say there's not a little bit of fear. Like this confidence that you seem like you're exuding is because God is with you. So I'm not saying that once you learn all this and you're like, ooh, I'm running out the blocks hot. No, at least that's not the case for me. But I am willing. I'm willing to take the step and the next step and the next step after that because I know that I cannot shake this message that He's given me.
That's good, Keish. And that's what I want to emphasize in our time together today. You actually really set us up for our next topic as well with the messenger and knowing who you are. But one of the things that I'm hearing Keisha say, and that's going to be important for all of us as messengers to understand, is that we have to be in positions to continue growing. And you cannot do this in isolation. So one of the things that Keisha recognized was like, yeah, I do want to help people do this. And the people that kept coming were needing business help. So she would be remiss if she was like, well, they need help with business and I want to help them, but I don't have any skills in that, but I'm going to try to piece something together. Like, no, she went and invested heavily in signing up for certain programs to build her arsenal and to build her skills. So one of the things that we talked about at the top of the hour of the podcast was that there has to be a willingness to go through your own process. So I don't know about you guys, but when you go to the doctor and he's telling you about certain health habits and what you should be doing or not doing to deal with your calorie challenges, and your doctor is more calorically challenged than you are, it's very difficult. He could be saying absolute truth, but it's a little bit more challenging to take heed because they're not the personification expression of their message. And I know people always say like, no, don't shoot the messenger. If it's true, it's still true. But how much more powerful will the receptivity of your message be when you have moral authority? You're living out, you're walking your talk. And that's one of the reasons sometimes people shy away from really taking on the mantle that God has given, because you begin to really count the cost and see the work that it's going to take to become everything that you believe that God has you to be. But one thing that Keisha said was, it wasn't like she went and took 19,000 certifications all at once. She was like, no, I want to help people. So I'm going to start with life coaching. And then she did that for a season. And then as the people needs began to get more specific, and it was, yes, I want to help people, but I have this desire to have a business. So she was like, okay, well, I can see myself helping with that, but I need to add some more tools to the arsenal. So don't try to put the cart before the horse where you just go and sign up for everything and you don't even realize that that's the full expression of the message that God has given you. For me, I know that I wanted to help people who had been tapped on the shoulder, kind of like Moses. So for me, that was a distinction between a messenger and a life coach or a finance coach, to share what their skills were. When God has tapped you on the shoulder and said, go get my people, there's a whole different mandate that comes with that with me. And it doesn't mean that you can't do other things, but that thing you must not neglect to do. And so I just want to encourage you guys to understand that it is going to take work. And that's why it's so important to be in these communal spaces, because sometimes I just want to go take a nap when I see the bigness of it. But because I am in community with people who are like-minded, who are like-visioned, I'm not allowed to just tap out, if that makes sense. So I just encourage you, as we're going through these podcast episodes and answering these 7 questions, just begin to store it up in your hearts and ponder on it like Mary did when she found out she was going to be having the King of Kings. Like, ponder it in your heart, but just know that at some point there's going to be some steps required on your part for you to begin taking, because if not, that haunting is going to get more and more magnified. So once again, as we're talking about this subject today of your message, it really is beginning to clarify what it is you want your tribe to know, understand, apply to their lives as a result of encountering your message. So your message is going to be transformative. And so when you realize that your message has been seeded in it to bring transformation, I want it to haunt you a little bit. Like, how can I withhold this, knowing that there's freedom on the other side? If Keisha withheld everything that God has now allowed her to bring to others, I don't know fully where I would be, some of the folks in our ministry would be, because she has been that kind of a clarifier and a gracefully applying pressure, or yes, I make up words sometimes, guys, but it's needed. So I'm going to share right now, if part of what God has called you to do is to start a business in partnership with him, and you're all lost about the tools and the techniques and the online processes, because you can't just be throwing stuff up online and expect it to gain traction. I'm going to ask you, please go visit LaKeishaGates.com, because we don't want to just be on here just sharing all the theoretical pieces and not provide you with communal spaces to grow as a messenger, or not provide you with the tools you need to go and get your business started right without it just being this hack job. And God has put people in position to help us with what it is that we need. But that is what we really wanted to get across today. I'm going to give Keisha, do you have any closing remarks or anything that you want to admonish them as they're pondering their message, or things that you want to encourage them with before we get ready to wrap up?
Just listen. And what I mean by that is that God has already been talking to you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the thing that you've pushed away, like, nah, I can't do that. Or I don't know what that looks like. And I would just encourage you to take the expectations of what it looks like off and just listen for what that core message is. Don't say, oh, I could be a coach with this. I could be a consultant with this. I could be a teacher with this. I could be a speaker with this. That's not what we're talking about here. This thing you do regardless. I do this regardless of if somebody is my client or not. It's the I can't help it. I can't help but have a desire to want to help people move their vision forward. I can't help but to help people contribute their life's work to the world. I do it with my children. If I hear it, I go to links to make sure that they are and have the ability to walk in their purpose. Yes. I can't help it. So take those chains off of your message. Let your message run free without limiting it from what you think that it could be.
Message. That is awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening today. And take the time as we begin to lay out these 7 questions, really take the time just to absorb what's being shared, because I really do believe that as you are able to answer these things and be true with it, then you are positioning yourself to be the messenger that God is calling you to be. So until next time, continue to get clear, and remember, your tribe is waiting.